This is Groundeffected. My name is your dad, and today I'm painting something almost as old as my dad. This video was sponsored by CA3D Studios, and I am obviously painting Rocky from the movie Rocky. And since nobody has time anymore for any of the semantics of things, we're just going to jump straight into this. I'm not even going to show you how I base coated this base. I'm going to now put a yellow color on the base, which will inevitably be the incorrect color because my brain tells me I don't like it. So what I did was I added a little bit of this white into the yellow that I currently had and then changed it to just a slightly different yellow. Yes, I'm that anal when it comes to the colors of things. Now I'm going to spray a clear lacquer over the top of everything because this will help to make it look shiny. The next steps for me is actually to tell you about these paints, and I really like these primers, but the only thing I don't like is just the little nozzle thing. It does this, which kind of sucks if you are not prepared for it. So I just thought I'd let you know to be aware of it. If you did buy one of these, don't close the bottle near your nicely painted model. You will have a sad time. But the paint itself is actually pretty cool. It goes through my airbrush so easily, I don't have to thin it or anything. I literally have never had a single issue of this clogging my airbrush at all, which for me is the biggest issue with primers that you spray through your airbrush. So aside from that, I'm going to move on to talking about my zenithal. I am not using an ink here. This is literally the white primer. I've been doing this in the last few videos, and I seem to feel like it's working fine. And by seem to feel, I mean I feel. I don't know why I thought seem would be a good word to add in that place. But let's just move on and not worry about my wording blunders and talk about how I painted the little bits of the things for the ring around the back of the base, which I just painted with black, obviously. And then I also painted them with a satin varnish, but I don't think I showed that because there was so much going on this week, so I kind of forgot to record a couple of things. Now, the ropes need to be painted, and they are annoyingly really awkward to hold. So I just stuck them down using a little bit of blue tack, and once they're dried, I turned them over and gave the backside of them the same treatment. I have this gloss black, and I thought this was probably a good time for me to use something like this, because I don't really know where else I would use this, other than in the situation where I need something to be gloss black. Now, I know that this looks like it's painted like a freaking 2-year-old, but I did about 15,000 layers, which eventually ended up covering it, because annoyingly when you put a gloss clear down, it is really hard to put layers over the top of it, because there is nothing really for the paint to grab onto. And while we're on the topic of the base, I did put a little piece of masking tape over the top section so that I could paint over this very carefully with the black that went in the front of the base, and this would leave behind a very nice fancy straight line, making it look like I'm better than what I am at what I do. I'm now going to glue in the ropes of the ring because I felt like this was a good time to do that. What I didn't do was glue in the posts into the ring itself. Hopefully this makes it easier to travel if it ever needs to travel, but this is a difficult one to travel, genuinely. Anyway, moving on to painting the skins. And for the skins I decided I would try to do something completely different because that is what I'm supposed to be doing. I can't just keep doing the exact same thing over and over because otherwise I would not be breaking any new ground. So I decided to go back to the Fairy Flesh set, and I used one of the darkest colors in there in order to create a base color. But because I had painted this in a very thin layer, basically 50-50 water and paint, and it was over a zenithal, it meant that the black would show through and have darker areas in the shadows and lighter areas anyway. I then worked a lighter color over the top of that, and then decided to go back to some of the other colors that I have. I feel like if you want to make skin tone, just spray 15 billion different types of skin tone that are generally in the similar area of the skin tone that you want, and eventually you'll have something that looks like skin tones, because skins have so many colors in them. So This is genuinely my approach. I literally will just keep adding layer after layer after layer after layer until you can see a lovely gradation between all these different colors that I put down. A very important step though is the Orcish Domus, and I'm a little bit scared for having to replace this because we all know it's difficult to find. Anyway, it is a very good color though for adding in the bendy parts of a body. Now when I'm painting a male character, I like to come back in with something like Gilliman flesh, or even a Reichland flesh would work, but this is just to sort of darken up the tones a little bit. You don't want them to be too bright and cheery. Because it's a male character, I don't know why that works, but it's an art thing. Like, you want them to at least seem like they're a little bit darker than a female counterpart. You definitely wouldn't want to be painting Rocky Balboa in the same colors that you would a lovely Wood Elf fairy. I will also use washes to shape things like the muscles, because this will really help to kind of blend out. These colors aren't so harsh, and they do soften on the edges where you spray them, so that means I can spray them kind of following the shapes of the shadows of the muscles. I also use that exact same color to just paint over a nips, and that way they look kind of like nips. I didn't really want to make them purple nips or anything because that would be a bit weird, so I just did that. That's it. End of story. Moving on to painting the white portions of this model, and I made a mistake by painting them white. What can I say? I ended up painting either a deck tan or a Wraithbone white over the top of certain parts, and then sprayed white in the highlights of that. But really what you should do is probably paint it black, then grey, then with a bit of like deck tan or white or something, because you really just don't want a solid white colour anywhere. The only place you want white is in the specular highlights of the eyes. On the shorts, I needed to paint the little band around the top with a red, and this was quite a dark red, not a very light red, but kind of like quite a dark red, to be honest. And so I decided to use Flesh Terrors for this, because this would go into the crevasses and make them a little bit darker, helping to make those rumples of that little waistband thing just look like they have a little bit more depth to them. For the side stripes though, I decided to use a Bile Red, because this is still a bright red. It's not too far off from the color of the rumple. It looks kind of similar, but it is not the exact same color. They could not be the same color. I don't know why, but my brain told me this is how it had to be. I then took some Skeleton Horde and dirtied up his pants a little bit, because, like I said, I made a mistake by painting them white, and I had no shape to the shadows. So I added that shape by painting in that color, obviously. The next steps now is to work on the legs, and like I said, white is a dumbass color to put on anything that is white. So I used Wraithbone in the case of the socks, because it's not white. It's like a creamy kind of color, and so it doesn't look so stupid if you do that. Then taking Bile Red, I can carefully kind of shape the outer edge of all of the stripes on his socks. I do this on both sides, both the top and the bottom side of those stripes, and once I'm done with that, I can then just close up the gap in between with the paint, and you don't see any weird stripes or marks through my paintbrush strokes, and at the same time I'm able to keep it all nice and tidy. Taking some of that Skeleton Horde, I'm then going to use that to spray over the bottom portions of the socks where it meets the shoes. I'm then going to take a little bit of that Flesh Terrors Red again, and very carefully, using a very small and sharp paintbrush, I'm going to paint the name on his belt. Now, I don't know why his name is on the belt, but it was put on the belt, and so I guess that's kind of cool, because then at least you would know who this very distinct looking guy is. Anyway, I would like to quickly tell you at this point about the sponsor of this video. That is CA3D Studios, and these dudes create some incredible range of different models. There is so many different things for you to choose from. Like, there is definitely something for everybody, and for a really great price you can join up and get models every single month. Not only that, but as you stay a subscriber to them, you start gaining more and more models. After a certain amount of time, you end up having all of the models, every single model in the entire world. Obviously not, but it feels like it when you look at the amount of models you have. Don't believe me? Go and check out the description. In the description is a link to go to CA3D Studios, and you can paint this model that I'm painting, or you can paint any of the other numerous other models that are available. Go and check them out right now. You have to. You have no choice, really. In fact, maybe watch the rest of this video and then click it just before the end of the video, because we don't want to lose the views. Now I'm going to get back to painting the shoes, and obviously what I did in the background there was paint a little bit of a red over the top of that center section, and then painted black, then the white. I did it in this order because you cannot paint red over black. Well, you could, but with a million layers, and I did not want to do that. So red first, the black covers the red, and the white goes over the top. I did leave it out though, but it would have gone over the top of red a lot easier than doing this any other way. I'm now going to work on the gloves, and the gloves required a little bit of deck tan. This is because deck tan is not white, but it will appear to be white in this situation. Again, like I said, if you painted this actually white, it would look so fake and so weird, and you would want to kick yourself because you would think that you are terrible at painting. But it's not the case. You are actually not too bad at painting. You just chose the wrong color in the wrong situation. Now, I'm going to be totally honest, the next step is actually kind of a rather difficult step, and the only way I can say to you how to do this is get good at holding your breath. Also, you're going to need a little bit of brush control to do this. Basically, I put my brush on its side, and I very carefully kind of just let the paint go over the raised edges on that logo that is on the glove. Other than that, I can't help you. That is going to take practice and require a little bit of effort on your part to learn how to do that. I cannot hold your hand through that, but what I can tell you is to paint his hair is pretty simple, really. I literally just painted it black. Just one color. I did not feel like it needed any more. He has a very dark hair color, and so I went that way. For his eyes, well, actually the caterpillars on top of his eyes, I decided to mix black with a bit of brown because it couldn't be solid black, and I did a load of little stripes with my paintbrush to make it look like little hairs. On his mouth, I can't give him pink lips because that would make him look way too cute for a boxer, and so I used Reichland Flesh Shade just to shape the corners of his mouth and a little bit of a shadow on the bottom of his lip. I then took Magos Purple and put it into the eyes to set them up for later. While that dries though, I can work on his beard, and I'm going to give him a slight 5 o'clock shadow. This is because he's a black haired person, which means his beard hairs are going to be dark, and so he would definitely have a darker skin around his chin because of that. So I used a grey for that, and I just airbrushed that on a very low air pressure to make sure that I didn't spray too much paint on my model at one time. For the eyes, I used highlight skin, and I very carefully painted the sclera of his eyes in the shape that I wanted them, leaving a bit of the Magos Purple around the outsides. I did take a bit of Magos Purple and put it into the corners as well. I don't want to go overboard with this. I kind of like how my eyes look, and I guess it's just a taste thing. If you don't like it, well then there is instructions at the end of the video. But before we get to that, let me just tell you how I did the irises. And I did that using Sargor Brown as the main shape. And once I've got the shape right, I'm going to take a lighter brown, which will be Mornfang, and I'm going to paint that into the center of the pupil, which will make it just look like there is a gradient on the inside. On this size scale model, you don't really have to go overboard with the irises, but you can actually add striations in them. I just don't think it's absolutely necessary all the time. I took a little bit of a lighter skin tone and painted that on the bottom lid of his eyelids just to help stand out a little bit more. Then I took some gloss clear paint and put that into a toothbrush and flicked it at him, because why? He is a boxer, he should be sweaty, and this will help to kind of emulate the effect of sweatiness on the dude, I guess. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I used a brush to kind of push some of it around in areas I thought it would be more prominent, and then I added a white highlight, a specular highlight, the only time I use white, into his eyes. After that, I gloss clear coated it, and then this time I stuck the hands on the model and then the torso onto this model and called it done. We are at the end of yet another Groundeffected video, I guess. I want to say a massive thank you. If you've made it this far, then freaking heck, dude. Well done. Congratulations. Make sure to wash your hands when you're done with the toilet, bro. Anyway, I do want to mention, if you're interested in this model, then go and check out in the description. There's a link for CA3D Studios, and I want to say a massive thank you to them for sponsoring this video and many of the others in the past. This is a trusted sponsor of the channel. These guys are incredible. They work well with their clients. They're just amazing. Like, genuinely, I don't just allow anybody to sponsor the channel. These guys have been vetted. They're incredibly good at what they do, and you should go and check them out. I want to say a massive thank you to my Patreons, because without them, I guess the lights would not be able to blind my eyeballs, and that would be a waste of all of everybody's time. If you're interested in helping support this channel and keeping this going, you might want to go check in the description for my own Patreon. But other than that, it is a very important thing I need to tell you, and that is, if you didn't like anything you saw in this video, I literally don't care, and you should probably now f*** off.